Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Steve, and on this episode of Cooking with Love, I'm going to be making a stuffed pork loin with roasted potatoes. Now, this is a favorite recipe of mine. It's great to make around the holidays when you're having a family gathering or if you're having company come over. It's mostly a fall dish because it does have apple and cranberry in it. However, you can vary that up and substitute other ingredients and make it any time of the year. Now, the pork is going to be stuffed with apple, cranberry, and sage, and the potatoes are going to be flavored with rosemary and garlic. In addition, we're going to be making a pan gravy using apple cider. Now, this combination of sweet and savory is just delicious with this pork. All right, let's get started. The ingredients we need to make our stuffed pork loin is, first of all, this is pork loin. It's a center cut, and I asked the butcher to butterfly cut it for me so it'll lay out flat so that we can then put the stuffing on and roll it. We're also going to be using apples, and any baking apple will do. I'm using Granny Smith apples today. These will be peeled and then cut up into small pieces. An onion that I'm going to dice. We have ground sage, dried cranberry, and if you don't like cranberries, you can substitute different kinds of dried fruit. I've actually made this with apricot and apple, and it just comes out really, really well. We need some minced garlic, Dijon mustard, apple cider, plain breadcrumbs, some olive oil for frying and for marinating our potatoes. We have some salt and pepper and dried rosemary that'll go with the potatoes. All right, let's start putting this together. The first thing I do is add the seasonings to the potatoes and let them marinate. You can choose any kind of potato you want. Today I'm using a baby Yukon Gold. I've made this with red potatoes. It comes out really well, russet potatoes. You can take larger potatoes and cut them up. I just chose to use the baby ones today. So I'm going to add the dried rosemary. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. And then I'm going to add the olive oil. And I'm going to add the garlic. And I just want to make sure all the potatoes are coated well with all the seasonings, and we're going to let them marinate while we prepare the stuffing for the pork. Now I'm going to start preparing this stuffing for the pork. I'm going to be using a Dutch oven for this. I like to fry up my ingredients for the stuffing in the oven and then use that same Dutch oven to cook the pork in. If you don't have a Dutch oven, that's fine. You'll just need a roasting pan for the oven and a frying pan for the stovetop. First thing we're going to do is add some olive oil to our pan. And I have the stove preheating to 400 degrees at this point. Now that our oil is heated up, I'm going to be adding the onions. And the garlic. The onions have cooked for about a minute. I'm just going to season the onion now with a little bit of salt and pepper. And I'm going to add in our chopped apple. And the dried cranberry. The apples have been cooking for about 3 minutes. Next I'm going to add the ground sage. I've cooked this for about another 2 minutes. The apples have gotten soft or tender. Now I'm going to place this into a bowl with our breadcrumbs. Here we have our fried apple and cranberry mix. I'm just going to be adding the breadcrumbs. Give that a good stir. And I'm going to be adding some apple cider to here to help moisten the breadcrumbs and get everything to combine together. I'm going to set this aside and allow it to cool. Next we're going to deal with our pork. Now, as I mentioned before, the butcher butterfly cut it for me, so it lays out relatively flat. And you can see there's some portions that are thicker than others, so I'm going to cover it with some plastic wrap. And I'm just going to pound it until it's flatter, more uniform thickness. Now that we've pounded this flat, we're going to use our Dijon mustard and spread it over the surface. We're going to season it a little salt and pepper. And next we're going to use our stuffing and spread it over the entire surface of the pork. Now we're going to roll the pork up, and you just want to roll it loosely so you don't force the stuffing out. And we're going to use butcher string to tie this up. Now we're going to go back to our Dutch oven pot, and we're going to brown the pork in some more olive oil. We're going to place the roast in the pan. And we want to make sure we brown all sides. I've browned the pork now on all 4 sides, cooking it two minutes or so on each side. Next I'm going to be adding the potatoes. And just put it kind of on the side of the pork. And we're going to be using a meat thermometer to cook this pork. You want to insert the tip of it till it's in about midpoint of the piece of meat. And I'm going to cover it, and it goes into the oven. It's going to take about an hour and 15 minutes or so to cook until the temperature is 145 degrees. The pork has reached temperature. I'm just going to check to make sure the potatoes are nice and tender. Now I'm going to move the pork to a platter and the potatoes to a platter, and then we're going to make our pan gravy. Our pork and potatoes are removed. They're covered with aluminum foil. I put the pan back on the burner at a medium-high heat, and now we're going to deglaze it with the apple cider. I'm just going to be scraping the bottom to get all those good little cooked bits off while I bring up the cider to a boil. Alright, the cider's coming to a boil. I'm going to add in some Dijon mustard now. And I'm just going to use a whisk to incorporate it into our cider. I'm just going to continue to stir this and allow the volume of the liquid to reduce by about 1/3 to thicken it up. Our gravy is reduced down. I'm just going to pass it through a strainer to remove all the little odd bits and get a nice smooth gravy. Our pork is finished. I'm going to go ahead and give it a little taste test. Very, very tender. It's really delicious. That combination of the sweet and savory filling with the pork, out of this world. Potatoes, you can taste a little bit of garlic and rosemary on them. They're roasted to perfection, very, very tender. It's a great recipe. It's a great thing to prepare for guests and our family when they're coming to your house. Why don't you give it a try and let us know how you like it. We'll see you on the next episode.